The other top story is Carly Fiorina, who many declared the big winner after her standout performance during the early debate. And I spoke with her earlier. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you so much for having me back, Chris.
The consensus is you had a big night in Cleveland on Thursday. I know it's still early, but have you sensed a bump in support, a bump in money, and if so, how are you going to capitalize on it?
Well, I do think it was a big night for me because going into that debate, only 40% of Republicans had heard my name, believe it or not. I had extremely low name ID. And so I think for many people, this was the first time they saw, wow, there's another woman running for president, and she's actually pretty good. So we've certainly seen an uptick in financial support. We've seen an uptick in support generally, and so it's very exciting. And I'm going to keep staying out there, talking to as many voters as I can about the issues I think our nation faces at this pivotal time, why I can win the job and why I can do the job.
But there is a reason that you were on the early 5 p.m. debate, and we're going to put up the latest Real Clear Politics average of national polls, and it shows that you were tied for 13th at 1.3%, and even in the early states, we've campaigned a lot, Iowa and New Hampshire, you're at 2%. And I think it's fair to say you have stood out at candidate forums, various events before, but it hasn't translated into voter support. Why is this going to be different?
Well, I disagree with the premise of your question. I mean, I started my campaign on May 4th from a standing start. I didn't have years of email lists. I'm not a professional politician. Most people had never heard my name. National polls tend to measure name ID. And so if you look at a number of state polls, we've been in the top 10 in state polls, but it hadn't yet translated into top 10 in national polls. I would also remind you that at this time in previous presidential elections, the polls, the pundits, and the money said that Jimmy Carter couldn't win, Ronald Reagan couldn't win, Bill Clinton couldn't win, and Barack Obama couldn't win. So the truth is this race has just gotten started, and game on.
You are one of the few candidates in the Republican field who is not afraid to take on Donald Trump. What do you think of the decision of the conservative group Red State to disinvite him from its gathering this weekend in Atlanta?
Well, you know, presidential campaigns are about watching someone under pressure and over time. And so the debate that we were just talking about, you asked some tough questions too. You talked to Donald Trump about his record of bankruptcy, but I didn't notice Donald Trump insulting you for 24 hours. There's no excuse for this.
No excuse for going after Megyn Kelly?
No. It's her job to ask tough questions. It's your job to ask tough questions, and it's a candidate's job to answer those questions however they see fit.
During your debate, you also talked about Donald Trump. Here's what you had to say.
Since he has changed his mind on amnesty, on health care, and on abortion, I would just ask, what are the principles by which he will govern?
What is your message to the millions of people, and you know it, there are millions of people out there who like Donald Trump?
Well, you know, I've said many times that Donald Trump taps into an anger with the ineptitude, the corruption of the federal government and the professional political class. I agree with that anger. It's why I'm running for president, because honestly, no matter your issue, no matter your cause, no matter the festering problem you hoped would be resolved by now, the political class has failed you. And so I understand that. And I firmly believe that we need a different kind of leadership now in the Oval Office that will actually challenge the status quo and get something done.
Why are you the better person to do that than Trump? Because that seemed to be your argument.
Because I don't think you get things done by insulting everyone. I have a track record of getting things done, of challenging the status quo, of leading towards results. I also understand how the economy works, how the world works and who's in it, how bureaucracies work, how to hold them accountable and cut them down to size, how technology works, how it can be used, and how it's also being used against us as a weapon.
I want to pick up on that in a moment. You have also gone after Hillary Clinton throughout your campaign and once again in Cleveland on Thursday. Here you are.
Hillary Clinton lies about Benghazi. She lies about emails. She is still defending Planned Parenthood, and she is still her party's front runner.
Why are you the best candidate to take on Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think, first of all, I will and have thrown every punch. As I also said on Thursday night, this is going to be a fight in 2016 between conservatism and a Democrat Party that is undermining the character of this nation. We have to throw every punch we have. And the truth is, Hillary Clinton lacks a track record of accomplishment, she lacks a track record of leadership, and she is not trustworthy.
Of course, with more visibility comes more scrutiny, and I don't think it was any surprise that the morning after your performance in the debate on Thursday, the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, went after you. Here she is.
What's impressive about a woman who nearly drove a Fortune 500 company into the ground, who fired 30,000 people when she was CEO, whose stock dropped by 50% when she was the head of the company, and then recovered after she was fired by 10%?
You know that if you end up as the Republican nominee, the Democrats are going to put that in every ad. She fired 30,000 people. It's exactly the kind of thing, Ms. Fiorina, that sunk Mitt Romney.
Yep. And you know, I'm flattered that the head of the DNC would come after me. I guess that means we're gaining traction here. But here's the facts. I led Hewlett-Packard through a very difficult time, the dot-com bust, post 9/11, the worst technology recession in 25 years. I would remind Debbie Wasserman Schultz that it's taken the NASDAQ 15 years to recover. Sometimes in tough times, tough calls are necessary. However, we also took a company from 44 billion to almost 90 billion. We quadrupled its growth rate, quadrupled its cash flow, tripled its innovation to 11 patents a day, and went from lagging behind to leading in every product category in every market segment. And yep, I was fired at the end of that in a boardroom brawl, which I've been very open about. And I was fired because when you challenge the status quo, which is what leadership is about, you make enemies. Steve Jobs was fired, Oprah Winfrey was fired, Walt Disney was fired, Mike Bloomberg was fired. I feel like I'm in pretty good company. And we need somebody to challenge the status quo of Washington, D.C. and get something done.
But as a political reality, because you know they're going to find, just as they did with Mitt Romney, they're going to find that poor unfortunate person who says, you know, Carly Fiorina went on and I lost my job. How are you going to be able to make that case and break through to voters in a way that Mitt Romney didn't?
We know there are lots of politicians who've run for office and lost too. That doesn't mean that all politicians lose. Not all business people are the same, but what I would argue is that there are a lot of people who understand as a chief executive, there's nothing harder than saying to someone, we don't have a job for you anymore. It's also true that the vast majority of Americans know that in tough times, sometimes tough decisions have to be made. And what they're frustrated by is the federal government never makes a tough decision.
All right.
We have never succeeded in shrinking the size of government. So let me tell you something else. We have a bunch of baby boomers who are going to retire out of the federal government over the next 5 or 6 years. I will not replace a single one. And yes, we need to actually get about the business of reducing the size, the power, the cost, complexity, and corruption of this federal government.
Okay, and I want to pick up exactly on that issue, which is your experience as a CEO. What would President Fiorina do to jumpstart this economy, and be specific?
First, we have to remember what the engine of economic growth is in this nation. You know what it is? Small businesses, family-owned businesses, community-based businesses. I started out in a 9-person real estate firm, typing and filing. It's how most people start. 2/3 of the new jobs are created by small businesses. Half the Americans are employed by small businesses. We're crushing them. We're now destroying more than we're creating. That's why we have to roll back this regulatory burden, take a 75,000-page tax code and make it 3 pages. Because guess what? When you have a big, costly, complicated government, only the big, the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected can deal with it. It's called crony capitalism. It is why we must reduce the size of government. So we have to get small businesses up and growing again. To do so, we must reduce the power, the scope, the complexity of government.
What would you do about taxes? I mean, are you going to cut corporate taxes? Are you going to cut taxes on the higher income people? And if you do, or if you're going to campaign on that, you know that Hillary Clinton will say, trickle-down economics.
Yeah. So we have about a 75,000-page tax code today. And that complexity favors the wealthy and the big. and the well-connected, because they can hire the accountants and the lawyers and the lobbyists to figure out how to make all that complexity work for them. We got to get it down to 3. My blueprint: lower every rate, close every loophole. Lower every rate, close every loophole. Maybe there's 1 or 2 loopholes that really help the middle class, but most of these deductions and loopholes and complexities actually benefit the wealthy, the powerful, the well-connected. But yes, our tax code isn't competitive anymore. It's ridiculous that we have the highest tax code in the world, tax rate in the world, when we're trying to attract jobs here. So lower every rate, close every loophole.
And when Hillary Clinton says, yeah, and the rich are going to make out like bandits.
What I would point out to Hillary Clinton is that every single one of the policies that she is currently pursuing make income inequality worse. Exhibit A: income inequality under the Obama administration. Exhibit B: every liberal state in this nation. I spent 12 years in the state of California, a state that's been ruled by liberals for a long time, and guess what you have? About 130 billionaires, good for them, the highest poverty rates in the nation, the exodus of the middle class, the destruction of industry after industry after industry. Income inequality is worse under progressive policies because progressive policies favor the wealthy, the well-connected, the big, and the powerful.
So let's talk micro. We got a minute left. What's your plan now? How do you seize this moment? Because I think a lot of people are giving you either a second look or, as you say, some of them a first look. How do you seize this moment and become a top-tier candidate?
Honestly, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I think I'm working really hard. Many people tell us we're out working every campaign out there. I'm about to leave for South Carolina. We're going to talk to as many people as we can through every medium there is. I will continue to do what I've done from day one. I will answer any question. I will talk to anyone. I'm not afraid to talk about anything. The more people get to know me, the more people support me. So that's what we're going to keep doing. I do believe this is a pivotal time in our nation's history. I am running for president because I think if we do not win in 2016, we are going to reach a point from which we may not be able to recover. I think it's vital that we demonstrate leadership in the world once again. I think it's vital that we get this economy going and growing, and I think it's vital that we finally begin to reduce the size and the power and the corruption of the federal government.
Ms. Fiorina, thank you. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Safe travels in all of those campaign appearances.